5:31. We'll get started. Mr. Thompson, we'll get started here.
Yes,
If we're good to go.
good to go.
All right. Sounds good. So I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee. It is Wednesday, June 30th. It is 5:31, and I will take roll call. I'm present. Mr. Salgado, Mr. Schultz.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Arena,
Here.
Mr. Butira.
Here.
I know Mr. Hoffman said that he probably was not going to be here. So I will go ahead and skip him. Ms. Crosby also sent me a meeting, email saying that she was going to be tied up in another meeting, but she was going to try to join. So I will look at that. And then Mr. McDonald. Mr. McDonald?
Here.
All right, thank you very much. Let the record reflect, we do have a quorum. Next item is approval of the April 1st, April 15, 2021 minutes. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. and second by Mr. Arena. Thank you very much. Any discussion regarding the minutes? Seeing none, I will go ahead and take a roll call. In the approval of the minutes, I'm a yes. Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Arena?
Yes.
Mr. Butita?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Mr. Thompson, was there anyone signed up for public speaking today?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so we will go ahead and omit item D, public comment, and move on to item E, which is our Chief Financial Officer report. Prior to doing that, just wanted to give a brief update why we have two Finance Committee meetings. Just want to let you guys know that we have a large order, and then we have operations as well tomorrow. So it wasn't fair to try to squeeze everything in one day. It would probably take us about 4 to 5 hours, depending on if there's discussion and everything. So we wanted to spread it out. We tried to, switch operations a little bit, maybe to Wednesday and then do whole Thursday. But, it didn't work out that way. So we decided to break out the finance agenda into two sections. One, obviously more informative, this one, and then the resolutions for tomorrow. So this is the reason why we did that. So we're trying to fine tune it just to make sure that we're not cramming a lot of information and, in one day. And so I talked to Mr. Rickard about that on Monday. So just so you guys know why we have two Finance Committee meetings, we just decided to break out the agenda into two sections so it wasn't so long and it just gets drawn out. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Mr. Rickard to go over the Chief Financial Officer report. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the Finance Committee. And just so you know, we've tried to break this out into a logical manner. You have all the presentations tonight, and then you'll have the whole night and tomorrow to digest that, and then consider that for your vote tomorrow. So hopefully this is a logical way of doing this and makes sense. I'm going to share my screen right now and show you what we're working on. Hopefully, let me just click that. You should see a property tax calculation and extension sheet. Does everybody have that on their screen? Okay, good.
Yes.
And first and foremost, when figuring out the complicated way Illinois handles property tax and the PTEL extension, I wanted to do an explanation of that process, walk you through those calculations so everybody has a good understanding of what we can and can't do with property tax. So PTEL, which stands for Property Tax Extension and Limitation Law, is the way a number of counties in Illinois extend taxes. It limits the amount of property tax you can collect at any given point in time to the lesser of 5% or the rate of inflation. So with that brief introduction, let's go into the calculations for the county and the way The system's broken out. We take the prior year tax extension, which gives us 40,349,559. And we take our inflation rate factor, which is supplied by the clerk, and we get an extension amount. This is the amount of taxes we could extend out at 1.4%, which is our maximum according to the PTEL limitation. With that information, it supplies us the numerator for the PTEL calculation. Then we go through and we take our assessed valuation, the full amount, it's actually $4,276,000,000. We take the supervisor of assessments best guess estimate at what those adjustments will be. And we see an increase in EAV of approximately 206 million at this point in the process. And this is just an estimate, which gives us an estimated 2021 assessed valuation. And from that, we subtract out 20 million for new construction, which isn't impacted by the PTEL limitation. So what we do, PTEL is explained briefly in the notes, like I just did earlier, and really it gives you some of the caveats with that estimate from the supervisor of assessments on why we're estimating 20 million. There are a lot of factors in that process, and this year because of COVID and a number of other factors going on, some of those assessment calculations are rather vague right now, but hopefully within a couple of weeks, by the end of this month, we're going to know exactly what that calculation is. But for purposes of calculating our PTEL limitation, it's adequate enough to do that calculation. You can see after we put in both of those estimates, we come up with a revised assessed valuation of 4.4 billion in EAV. That provides us our denominator. So we take our numerator, our denominator, that gives us our PTEL limiting rate of 9.9167. With that information, and you can see down here in our projection for estimated fiscal year 2022 at 9167, it's prorated over our EAV for the county, and it gives us our estimated tax collections for our extension for next year, 2022. And you can see the increase there, which I'll explain later what that amount is. You'll see it later in the report. So don't be too concerned with it at this point. So we have our 2020 estimated EAV, our the calculator 2022, that gives us an increase in EAV of 4.37%. Some of the notes with this calculation, it explains that under PTEL, we're limited to the lesser of the rate of inflation, or the 5%, and they gave us our 0.9167% per $100 of assessed valuation. There's some additional guidance that we cannot exceed our limiting rate. These are our limiting rates, or this maximum rate, which is this rate right here. We have to stay within both of those according to PTEL. And the levy and extension amounts in this report are currently equal. In other words, this amount is the same as this right now. That will change. It's impacted by the TIF districts and enterprise zones. I don't anticipate much of any change at all in that extension amount. Generally, what you see what we're going to levy is what we're going to extend out next year. How this impacts our budget, what this enables us to do, everything with our calculation and our extension forward would remain flat. We're projecting out that increase for the general fund. We've also lowered our IMRF and our Social Security ever so slightly because we have healthy fund balances there. So we clipped 100,000 off in total, put that in the general fund because the budgetary needs of the county are very significant, and that will help slightly to offset some of those issues. So that gives us that amount of room to work with. Our total extension increase is 465, but the aggregate for the general fund will be 565 because we lowered these two funds. All the other ones are flat across the board. Any questions on this report?
I don't see anyone.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this report is telling us how much we're permitted to raise the levy,
Correct.
and the dollar amount that you're that it says we can raise the levy was $550,000.
The 1.4% was our inflation factor. The maximum amount is the 564. Correct. 565.
And that's just the new construction is separate from this.
That component is taken out of the calculation. Let's go back up here. They take that out for the PTEL calculation for the rate factor.
So if we choose to raise the levy, an increase for new construction is separate from this increase here. Correct?
The calculation, correct, that's different. So what you would have would be, that would be a restriction under PTEL, would be the 564. But as far as the rate calculation, the EAV is taken out.
Right, but in actual dollars that we levy, that we take in taxes, that increase in taxes levied because of new construction is not part of the 564, correct?
No, it's not. I'd have to look into that and get a better answer for you, but that is not part of the calculation.
Okay, so last year we raised our levy, and I believe the amount was more like 900,000. And this year, the amount that we could raise it is 564,000. And
because of the 1.4 limitation, correct?
Okay, so why would that limitation be different this year than last year? What affects that limitation?
The limitation is supplied by the I believe that's the Treasury Department. That goes to the county clerk. County clerk gives us a notification of what that maximum PTEL inflation rate is, and that's 1.4% for this calculation.
Okay, so, and if we choose as a board not to raise the levy this year, it would allow us, we would just be levying the same dollar amount that we did last year, correct?
Well, you could do that, but you wouldn't be able to make your budget numbers.
Right. Well, we haven't.
I would not recommend doing that.
We haven't established the budget yet, right?
Correct. We're still in that process.
Okay. All right.
This is just tonight. It's just informative. You still have an opportunity to do other things right now. This is just for review.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions regarding the presentation of the tax levy? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Rickard.
I will go on to report number 2. This will show you our revenue projections. We do have some good news here. The revenue projections for 2021 are coming in better than anticipated. You can see here, this was our budget number for last year at $28,165,000. This year we're looking at $30,709,000. We've been given guidance from the Illinois Department of Revenue not to use that number for projection forward, that the 2021 results are an anomaly. They expect sales tax to essentially drop within a curve level. So what we've done is we've weighted this down for that factor in consideration. And like I said, the Illinois Department of Revenue is advising not to use this number because this number is skewed significantly because of COVID. So we arrived at a number of approximately $29,597,250, which is just where we are right now today. If you ask me what our projection is, that's what our projection is right now. And we'll use that for guidance with our budgeting purposes. Right now, we're calculating all our expenditures, and we'll come back later in the process and give, when we give our recommended budget report, we'll give better guidance on those revenue projections. This is just where it's at right now. So a number of factors have really helped. Our sales tax are coming in better than projected. A lot of that is due to people staying home, making purchases, and doing a lot of what I'll call home projects, or just staying home and spending money as opposed to doing other things with that money. So our sales numbers are actually fairly good right now. And that's definitely a positive and something we can look forward to. In here are a number of caveats that break down. I know you have the board will have a number of questions on what makes up these numbers. And we tried to break it down by category to show you specifically. You see the A, B, C, D, E, and you can see the breakdown by category, what makes up those numbers and how they're calculated. So right now, those are our projections as far as revenue. You can see our activity over the past several years, what our actual was in 2020, our budget for 21, our projected, and our budget projection as of the state right now where we are. Any questions on the revenue projections? Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Are we ready to go to the ARP presentation, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, let's continue on next one to ARP.
I'm sure this is the exciting one that everybody's looking forward to, so we'll roll right into our ARP presentation. Good news is we've had a lot of practice over the past several months with creating a capital budget. We just did our capital plan earlier this year. The American Rescue Plan capital portion is modeled after that, so we really have a leg up and a jump over a lot of other counties with preparation because we've already gone through this process. We're able to use it as a framework for our American Rescue Plan. So without further ado, I'm going to explain a little bit about what this is. The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, also called the COVID-19 Stimulus Package, or the American Rescue Plan, is a $1.9 trillion economic stimulus package passed by the 117th Congress and signed into law by President Biden on March 11, 2021, to speed up the United States recovery from an economic and health effects of COVID-19. Winnebago County's award is broken up into two tranches. First one came in on June 1st of 2021. It was slightly over what we were projected to have. I'm assuming that's an interest component because our money came in slightly later than some of the other surrounding counties. I guess that's one of the risks you take when you name your county beginning with a W. So that may have a negative impact when we get our stuff from the Fed. So anyway, we were projected our total ARP allocation is $54.8 million. That's going to be broken up into two installments. We already have the first installment. Second installment will come 12 months later. And our deadline to spend this is December 31st, 2024. No guarantees, but I wouldn't be surprised if that gets extended. It's going to be rather challenging spending that amount of money with every other county in the United States also doing the same thing at the same time. We're really going to put tremendous pressure on the supply line for some of the resources we're looking to purchase. And this is not an extensive list by any means. Some of the permitted uses of funding include supporting public health response to COVID-19. A lot of that was already covered with FEMA grants and CARES money. Addressing the negative economic impact caused by COVID-19, serving the hardest hit communities and families, replacing lost public sector revenue, providing premium pay for essential workers, investing in water and sewer infrastructure, and investing in broadband infrastructure technology. This list is by no means exclusive. The guidance we got is over 150 pages of guidance on things we could spend this money on. And the more recent frequently asked question updates is given even broader guidance in certain areas with how to spend this money. We have broken this down into 4 manageable chunks of activity. Just because they have different phases doesn't necessarily mean that's the order we're going to take them in, except for the ARP capital plan, which is already and is going to be presented to you tonight. But that plan is already ready. Phase 2, so phase 1 is the capital plan. Everything that was in our original capital plan that would qualify for ARP, we shifted over to the ARP plan, and there are a number of other projects that were added to that. Currently, that's a $20 million request for the ARP capital plan for the county. Phase 2, hopefully we plan to roll this out in approximately 3 to 6 months. This is the Family Law Center. Essentially what we're trying to do is work with the court system and the chief judge to identify a utility for the public safety building. So we can not only kill two birds with one stone, rehabilitate a building that's already costing us a significant amount of money, but provide some use for the court system and do so in a way that's going to benefit the community. So the chief judge and the circuit clerk, working in conjunction with the county administrator, the chairman, and me, the thought process is they're coming up with a plan to provide family law courtrooms specifically designed for that aspect of the justice system to serve that community. There are a number of issues with the facilities that the county currently maintains, and this will solve a number of problems. So right now, the work that's being done is a feasibility study on how we can utilize that building within the confines of ARP. As soon as we have a plan ready to present, we'll bring that before the committee for your review, comment, and consideration. The public safety initiative essentially involves a number of public safety issues involving the jail and security around not only the judicial complex, the jail, the sheriff's office, and all the county buildings in the county, but provides a security system and public safety system that can work in conjunction with the city of Rockford. So we're currently analyzing that opportunity, and hopefully within 2 to 4 months, we can come back with a report to this committee. Phase 4, and for a number of our board members that have community-minded projects in mind, this is the area where we're going to focus on some of those issues. One of the things we want to really look at is the blight situation in several of our county board districts. We've had a number of requests from some of our urban-based county board members to find some relief for blight issues in their community. There's also a consideration for some water improvements related to necessities of providing water for certain neighborhoods that currently have issues with their well. So these are just some of the programs we're looking at. It's also the opportunity to find neighborhood-based programs where we could implement some benefit for the community, and that would be through phase 4. And I actually anticipate phase 4 will actually come before the county board for vote and consideration, probably before phase 2 and phase 3, because I think we can move a little bit quicker with this than we can the other 2 phases. Okay, so just to recap, phase 1 is ready now. We're putting that forth for your consideration. Family Law Center, 3 to 6 months. Public Safety Initiative, 2 to 4 months. And Neighborhood Improvement Plan, probably 2 to 4 months. Here's a breakdown of the county's capital plan, which is phase 1, I'm sorry. Capital improvements directly are almost $3 million. Another equal component is public safety. Technology infrastructure is really a huge ask and really a huge need for the county. Many of us are aware of some of the issues that have happened with cyber issues and cybersecurity. One of the strong directives we've gotten from the federal government is that they want and expect a significant portion of these ARP funds to be used to improve these technology infrastructures within the county. So $4.8 million is allocated to that. Here's an area where I know a number of board members are probably going to be very pleased. We wanted to get some money directly out. We didn't want to wait for phase 4 or any of the other phases. We wanted some money to directly get out to the community at the direction and discretion of the county board. The chairman has directed that we allocate $1 million immediately for that need, and that money can be allocated either as specific earmarks for each board member, or much like we do with the host fees. We can meet, have a committee determine what the rules and application process would be, and allocate based on a project basis, very similar to what we do for host fees. Revenue replacement, we were initially really excited that we could replace all the lost revenue we had at the county. Unfortunately, based on the calculations in worksheets we were given from the Treasury Department, only about $600,000 of the money that were impacted at the county level is eligible for that revenue replacement. But that's something we're going to work into the budget too. One challenge we're going to have, and this is another big push by the federal government, there is a strong push to increase and rebuild our election infrastructure. There's a lot of mandates coming down from Washington on how we're going to conduct an election. what equipment we're going to use, what features are going to be involved in that process in order to secure the safety and security of our election process. So a plug amount for election infrastructure is there for $3 million. And again, I want to point out that even though you may make an approval of the budget at this time, everything still has to come back according to the county purchasing policy for eventual reapproval by the county board for projects. So if you decide, gee, right now that sounds good, but the county clerk decides to spend that $3 million on a voting center situated in Hawaii, you can come back and say, no, it's not what we intended to do with that money. We're not going to approve that plan. Try again. So it's just a blocked out area for that need, but we know that's going to be a significant ask that's going to come from the federal government, and we would rather pay for that with our funds than to dip into our general fund because frankly, we don't have the money available. If we have to come up with this money, it's going to have to be through a bond to pay for that. So I'd rather pay for that with our funds if that's the will of the county board. Last, we have project administration, close to a little bit more than $500,000. That sounds like a lot of money, but remember the size of this project. It's a $54 million project. Two of these initiatives are going to require specific expertise. The Family Law Center and the Public Safety Program are both going to require expertise assistance with some of those projects. And we're also going to require, much like we have the ERAP program, where we have compliance, a person on hand to monitor the compliance with the grant, we're going to have to hire either a consultant or an employee to sit, or two employees to handle just compliance with the ARP project. If we don't do that, we could discover a year or two from now, we're going to have some real problems with the Treasury Department if they disallow our expenditures. So it's very important to make sure all our expenditures that we put forth are compliant, and that's what this money here is going to help do. The contingency amount has grown significantly over the past few weeks. Initially, I think it was a little bit above 1.5 million. It's now $4 million. And you're probably wondering, why is our contingency so high? What we're discovering with every other county in the United States coming out and coming up with their own capital plans to spend this money, the cost in the market right now for materials and resources has gone up about 15 to 20%, and will probably continue to go up. So that contingency is to help offset the cost with a lot of these programs that were costed out weeks and months ago that we know are going to increase, but we don't quite know what that increase is. This will enable us the flexibility without coming back to the board to meet those needs within reason to cover that with a contingency amount. So phase one, the budget is $20 million. Again, a lot of this you've already seen. I've highlighted in black. All these capital improvements, public safety and technology infrastructure, you've already seen them because they were part of the original SIP plan. These aren't anything new. You've saw them before. You've had an opportunity to look at them. They've just been shifted over to this plan. The new stuff is here, the community grants, revenue replacement, election equipment and infrastructure, and project administration, and a large sum for contingency. That's all new. And I hope you understand why we've had to allot certain money in those areas. Where we are in the ARP timeline with phase one, plan signed into law, we sorted the projects based on SIP and ARP. A first review was done on April 22nd of our SIP ARP capital requests. American Rescue Plan, we received our funds June 1st. We did a presentation to the county administrator June 7th, and a presentation June 8th was done with the chairman. And we met with caucus leaders and actually several of the board members that requested an opportunity to talk about this with them on or before June 21st. What we still have yet to do is the presentation of the Finance Committee, which we're doing right now, and the budget request, which will be voted on tomorrow, and that hopefully will go before the board. One thing I would hope the board considers based on all the other requests that are coming from the other counties is, I know we like to lay things over and wait and consider them and wait 30 days. 30 days would be very expensive for the county to wait, knowing what's going to happen with some of these other counties. So I wouldn't want to squander this opportunity we have to move quickly on this, but again, it's a board decision and a board consideration. It's just my advice and counsel on that issue. And here are some other considerations with the ARP capital plan. All ARP expenditures must comply with guidance from the Treasury Department. So every expenditure request has to have a approval document that has to get reviewed by our compliance people, by the administration to determine, yes, we believe this is ARP compliant. If it's not ARP compliant, even if you pass this budget, it's not ARP compliant, it doesn't get passed, it doesn't get spent, it doesn't get approved. All ARP expenditures must comply with the county purchasing policy, which means even if it is an ARP compliant project, they still have to follow all the rules, all the regulations, and all the mandates established by the county board on how we're going to spend money for the offices and departments. And then finally, all our fund purchases that require county board approval will have to come back to the county board for individual approval for each and every one of these projects that require that. So this approval process isn't the last word on this. This is the beginning of the process, not the end. Okay, any questions on the presentation?
Sure there are. So anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Arena.
Mr. Chairman, does the packet for tomorrow include a line item of all the allocations within the budget?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, it has. And I've also already sent that at your request, Mr. Arena, to all the county board members. Not only got a copy of the presentation, they got a line item copy of the request. They also have the rules that were active at the time that this packet was put together.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard.
Other questions? Yes, Ms. Fellers. Unmute.
I'm sorry. It was my understanding that these funds were meant to be a supplement to our budget and not to supplant other budget items. Many of the things that are in the capital plan are things that we had in the budget anyway. Why is it that we're not using our regular budget money to spend on things that they were already budgeted for?
Okay, I'd like to clarify that. These are mainly capital requests. There was no money available for the capital requests. That's why we did a capital plan earlier this year. That hasn't been a regular function or duty in the budgetary process for Winnebago County to actually have a capital plan for the offices.
Right, but all of the things that are in this packet, you know, for example, purchases of computer equipment, purchases of vehicles, those are things that would usually be budgeted for anyway. Are they not in the budget already? And if they are, why are we using this money for that? Because I see a lot of items on here that I don't see as serving hardest hit communities and families. I don't see them as helping people who have been you know, impacted by COVID. I see very little money for businesses. I think it was 1 million as a line item for local businesses. There's nothing for childcare. There's nothing for healthcare. There's nothing for education. And so I see more than 1/3 of our money being spent on things that we should have budgeted for anyway, without us giving attention to things that are of immediate and dire need.
Okay, I don't dispute your discussion about items. Really what we wanted to do is this is one aspect of it. The requests that you're referring to would be excellent issues to work on with phase 4. And that's more for the community improvement things, the blight reduction, the community programs, and that would be the location for those type of initiatives. This is just the capital items requested by the county that would qualify under ARP is what we're looking at.
Okay, under what section, for example, like I saw one of the items here is an expansion of animal services. How does expanding animal control services help the hardest hit neighborhoods in the county?
Okay, the concern there is because COVID is all actually cats and dogs, I believe, can be impacted by COVID too. So to assist with reducing the spread of COVID, that was one of the requests we have. And I don't want to, not focus on the individual requests, because we could be here 2 days talking about the merits of each request. And really, that's a policy decision by the county board to determine what projects are worthy and not worthy based on your determination. The capital request I'm just looking at in total of what you want to look at, but I'm not disputing that there are other areas of the ARP that can be used for projects specifically that you're requesting for, but we tried to break it up into 4 different chunks, with chunk number 4 being the area in focus you have an interest in. And that's what I would encourage is sit down, work with the administration and determine what social service programs that qualify under ARP would make a good fit for phase 4 of the ARP program for Winnebago County.
Okay, I also would consider water and sewer infrastructure and broadband infrastructure to be part of a capital improvement plan. Is there a reason that broadband was eliminated from that?
Oh, they actually, all the computer infrastructure is in phase 1 capital. That's not phase 4.
Okay, but I see a lot of, and I think maybe Gus could speak to this. I think I saw that he was on board. When I see broadband infrastructure, I'm assuming that that's an increasing access to broadband, especially in our rural areas and in areas that are underserved, which is going to require the laying of fiber or the expansion of Wi-Fi capabilities. I don't see that in the plan. Am I missing that?
What I would suggest, Ms. Fellers, if you want detailed information on the IT request, we would have Mr. Gettner come in and talk and speak specifically to your requests. I'm not an expert on IT technology. I can tell you overall that the focus and request and push from the federal government is they looked at this specifically as an impacted item and specifically an area where they wanted to see money spent by the county for IT infrastructure to harden our defenses against external attacks and to protect the security of the data of our citizens.
Well, and then my other question is, you had mentioned the need for election security and election infrastructure, and we're also talking about purchasing some election support things, but I don't see anything in this plan to help support and the placement of a polling place in the Winnebago County Jail. As many of you may know, or some of us may be hearing this for the first time, legislation was passed in this last session, which gives us the option of placing a polling place in the Winnebago County Jail, which would allow those people who are being held but have not yet been convicted to exercise their right that is guaranteed to them under the Illinois Constitution. So can that be added? Can we make sure that we have the proper material and facilities so that we can expand that portion of our election security?
What is available right now in this initial budget is a box to fill with the needs as required. And I believe you are correct that the push and impetus from the federal government is to ensure that everybody that is entitled to vote gets that opportunity. And we're specifically setting aside money to meet that obligation and opportunity with the county clerk. But the clerk is still pricing out specific equipment, what those needs are, how she wants to impact the community, what's the best way to maximize her impact in the community to do that. I would encourage you to sit down with Ms. Gumau and discuss what her plans are to meet that need.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rickard, and thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak.
Sure, not a problem. Mr. Thompson, you
Yes.
you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to interject in here that I don't think that the purpose of tonight's discussion and presentation is to debate the merits of the individual projects, although that will certainly be appropriate at a future point. Certainly a little bit more tomorrow night, or quite a bit more tomorrow, when the Finance Committee actually has to decide on advancing the resolution to the county board, and then certainly when it gets to the board. And at this point, we're only looking at phase 1 of ARP. So I think the tendency is to start debating this evening the merits of each individual specific project. And at least in my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that was the purpose.
I mean, for my,
we
yeah.
have to try to answer questions, certainly.
Sure. No, and I think this is an open forum, or this is a presentation. we'll have discussion tomorrow. There's questions that we can address as well. I don't think it's without merits to ask those questions. This is an open dialogue presentation. Certainly we'll take those questions tomorrow. You know, we can debate about them, whether we are in agreement or disagreement. But I think that just trying to get feedback as well would be nice. Just trying to figure out what's going on with this art money, as some of us may not know what, you know, the intent is. Like, for example, you know, those are good, valid questions about education. I'd like to see go money to education, but I know the school district has money, right? There's other institutions that have got money on that aspect of it. There's criteria on infrastructure, sewer that can be used. So most of this presentation is part of the capital project that we're doing. So it's good to have the dialogue, Mr. Thompson. I think that it grants merits. And to ask those questions, I mean, and to be transparent as much as we can and lay this information out there. Tomorrow, obviously, we'll take a vote, whether we agree, disagree, we can debate, you know, certain items if we want to, or potentially amend, you know, make amendments. That's also an option that could be done for that aspect of it. But I think it's good discussion topics, but once again, you know, I think Mr. Rickard hit it on the nail on the head, is that, you know, this is based on the criteria that kind of has been presented. There's 4 phases that we're looking at, that certain items that we want to push, you know, and particularly could fall into those other 3 categories that are still out there that we need to do. $20 million is a huge, large sum of money that's out there for this capital projects. It is part of that discussion that we were trying to capture some of the money to absorb, so we wouldn't have to bond out, you know, some of this money for some of these capital projects that, you know, have been delayed. And with the art money, it gives us that opportunity to capture some of those dollars to and you know, spread that cost across the board. So so those are a couple highlights there, but I do appreciate the questions. If there are any additional questions, like I said, no one's going to make a vote tonight. Tomorrow we'll debate about it on particular merits. Mr. Butita.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a quick question about the revenue replacement, $600,000. Is that going to be something that's already been factored in or dumped into this year's budget? It's going to be in the 2022 budget, or is that money that we can consider as an offset to a potential tax increase, the PTEL tax increase? What's the status of that 600,000, I guess, or where do you see it come into play?
What the 600,000 will do is it will replace the money that should have come in that didn't come in because of COVID-19. So when we initially would have planned our budget, there would have been a certain assumption that we would hit certain numbers, and those numbers were lowered because of the COVID-19. The money that we would get for the 600,000 could or would be used however the county board sees fit. If you want to use it to offset part of our budget costs this year, that's an option. If you want to use it for reserve balance, that's an option. If you want to spend it on community projects, that's an option of the county board. That's completely at your discretion. The nice thing about shifting funds from ARP to the general fund is it frees that money up. You have a lot more discretion with how to spend that money than you do under ARP, which is why when we can shift that as a revenue loss, we want to do that because it gives you, the board member, more decision-making ability with what to do with those funds. Okay. So completely up to the board.
So as of right now, that 600,000 is in this year's general fund budget and at the discretion of the board.
Right now, that money is a potential wish that we have with the capital plan. If the board approves it and we make that allocation, that's money that can go back into the budgetary process, and the board can provide further discretion later on what they want to do with those funds.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just so that I'm clear, if the board passes this budget, every line item in this budget will eventually come to the board for a vote And if we determine at a future date that a particular item isn't appropriate or could be, the money could be better spent in a different way, we'll have the opportunity to make those decisions at some point in time, right?
Well, I'll clarify that, not everything, but anything that requires board approval now will still require board approval. So for example, if there's a line item in there for, I don't know, a $500 for a new condenser for billing facility services, if that's not required to be bid out and doesn't require county board approval, that wouldn't, but anything that's a project of any significance is going to have to come back before the board, because anything over, I believe, $25,000 in certain circumstances has to come back for the board for a vote. Much of that has to be RFP'd out in addition to coming back before the board. And then a presentation by that department head or elected official is going to have to be conducted in front of the board, explaining why they think they need that, why that fits the plan. And this is just the first hurdle. So yes, they're going to have to, with those programs that have to come back for a board vote, they have to come back for a board vote.
Okay,
If
so
that makes sense.
this budget will consume the majority of our first ARP payment then?
It will consume $20 million of it, yes,
It was what, 24?
correct. 24.8, I believe. Let me pull that up here real quick, just so I and everyone else can know what we're talking about. So out of that first $27 million, 20 of it would be for this phase 4 project. But that still leaves the majority of the ARP funds for whatever, like I said, those 3 other programs and the allocations for that.
Okay, and then those timelines that you put out there for the family law, for public safety, neighborhood improvement, those dollars are not part of this 20 million?
Correct. Those would have to come out of the remainder of what we have from ARP. So the phase 4, phase 3, and phase 2 would come from the remaining money, which is still the majority of the money.
The remaining money meaning what we'll get next year?
The remainder of because we're only spending 20 of the 27, so you still have that 7 million plus this 27 million, plus really the 600,000 in general fund money you're still going to have for other needs and projects too. This money right here is coming right back to the county board. So even though it's in phase 1, this is money we're pulling out of ARP and putting back into the discretion of the county board to spend. And just so you know that we have a huge $4 million contingency because of where costs are. So whatever doesn't get spent out of contingency rolls back into the program too.
Okay, so the actual implementation of the Family Law Center and the neighborhood stuff really won't happen until 2022 when we actually have the money in hand, right?
Correct. Even if we wanted to start those initiatives today with a public safety building, because it involves it's going to involve a significant engineering structuring, we would be hard pressed to spend the money now, even if we approved it now. So yes, the cash flow timing of this does become an issue. I'm not as concerned about this as I initially was, simply because I know it's going to be very difficult to push money out as fast as we want to, because we're going to be in competition with every other county to do so at the same time. We're getting lead times just on a lot of the technology stuff for the IT department of 18 months out.
Right. So if if 3 months from now we realize that there was some urgency for phase 3 or phase 4, some element of it, we could still amend this budget to shift money over to do different things with it. Our vote tomorrow is not locking us in really, right?
It's just a budget. It's a guideline and a budget with the plan in which to spend. But if you come back 3 months from now and say, we want to do a reallocation because 4 of these projects didn't fit our need, you can pull those out at that time and amend the phase 1 and put it in phase 2, 3, or 4, however you see fit. The board has that ability and discretion. You only can't do that once the money's spent. But before it's spent, before it's allocated, the board can come back and amend this if they want to.
All right, so.
And I'm assuming you will, yeah, I
Ms.
assume you will
Feller's
because of the
point
size of the commitment.
Right, so to Ms. Feller's point about maybe urgent needs to deal with, stuff that was COVID impacted, if that comes up and it's obvious to everyone, we need to act now, we can address it.
Yeah, absolutely. And my hope, like I said, is I'm hoping that phase 4 actually beats phase 2 and phase 3 to market, because it depends on how quickly the board can come to an agreement and how they want to meet those neighborhood improvement plans, the blight, the water infrastructure, and any other social service programs. If you can package that all together and get it ready for next month's finance committee meeting, I'll be more than happy to make that presentation and recommendation at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Right. For example, I think the Family Law Center, although that's shown in phase 2, that's probably going to be the one phase that is going to take the longest, and it probably will extend well beyond the 2-year time frame. And so and like Dave said earlier, I think the federal government is most likely going to end up extending that, that time period, that 2-year commitment. I would anticipate that.
Anyone-
Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is more in the bigger context. So, Mr. Rickard, at this point, do you believe that we're going to finish in the black or in the red for this current fiscal year for the general fund and for the 1% public safety tax fund?
I think we have some real challenges on the public safety sales tax side. We just had a meeting today with the sheriff's office and discussing some of the challenges that the sheriff's office currently facing. We do anticipate that as of right now, as of today, the revenue that we're generating on the federal prisoner side should offset any increases, but I'm anticipating some type of presentation by the sheriff at probably the next finance committee meeting, discussing some of those financial challenges he's having on the public safety sales tax side. General fund, I haven't seen any real area of concern as of yet with not meeting our obligations with the budget process, but certainly the public safety sales tax is challenging right now.
So when you say it's challenging, are you anticipating a deficit, or are you just anticipating?
I'm concerned that we're going to have difficulty having more revenue to cover expenses than expenses, but we have to sit down and work with the sheriff. Like I said, we should have some explanation, and you deserve an explanation of where we are specifically with the public safety sales tax. I'll have a discussion with the sheriff's office and some type of presentation for the next meeting, specifically to talk about some of those challenges and revenue opportunities that we have.
So you're uncertain at this point whether the increased revenue will be adequate to cover the increased expense.
That's a fair statement.
I just want to point out that this is an annual problem with the sheriff overspending his budget. And to this point, we've had difficulty as board members getting to some level of agreement on that issue. So if you're successful in that, that would be wonderful.
Well, thank you. And like I said, me and Mr. Thompson and Chairman Chiarelli are really motivated to work very diligently with the sheriff to, as best we can, work with him to solve a lot of the issues that he's facing with his office.
All right. We'll look forward to that presentation, Mr. Rickard. Anyone else have questions regarding this? The ARP, either the phases and the structure of it, whatever. All right. Seeing none, we can continue, Mr. Rickard, with your next piece if you're done.
And now we go on to the last piece. We'll quickly go over what some of the requests are. And like I said, I agree with Mr. Thompson. We're just presenting them at this point. It's what I would suggest is look at the requests, do an evaluation, come up with some questions, and then we could address some of those questions today, or we can address them tomorrow, or even at the county board. And like I said, this is only one part of the entire plan. If we were to, and the reason we broke it up into chunks is if we were to try to do everything all at the same time and make a perfect plan, we wouldn't even hit our deadline in 2 years because there's a lot, just because of the magnitude of this request, it was better to break it up into manageable chunks and present it to the board for your review. So I'll begin with the capital plan, walk you through it, what some of the requests are. First and foremost, we have animal services. Initially, they had this listed as a one-item request, and I suggested for his benefit, the county board's benefit, you're going to want to break those expenditures down so the board can understand what you're requesting. What I would suggest, if you want specific answers on a specific request, the best way to get the most current, up-to-date, and logical information is to contact the specific board, the department head and/or elected official. In this case, Brett Frazier from Animal Control, he's requesting a number of improvements to the facility to deal with COVID standards, animal safety, patron safety. And one thing to consider too, and one thing we really want to do to give some credence in some of the planning that we've done with ARP is one of our considerations is liability mitigation. We want to find ways where we can deal and interact with the public in a way that lowers our risk of liability profile. So liability mitigation is something that we're really focused on, and hopefully Mr. Frazier's request meets some of those obligations and requirements. And I'm not here to defend his request or to promote his request or anything else. I just present it as it is, but this is what he's requesting for animal control. Moving on, this is the chairman's, and this, I believe, was to address some of the concerns Ms. Fellers and some of the other board members suggested, is that we need to do something now for our community. We need something instantly where we can get some quick money out to specific and needy programs. And this is what the chairman suggested, is making $1 million available right off the bat for business and economic development grants. And as long as it's ARP compliant, whatever the board wants to do, if you want it to be specific earmarks by board members, where each get an allocation and you decide how to spend it, or if you want to do it much like we do for host fee funds, totally up to the board how you want to do that allocation with those funds. Next one, and this goes in relationship to some of the initiatives that the chairman is pushing as far as finding creative ways to keep and work with our constituents to keep them out of jail and to assist them once they are out of jail. A focused deterrence initiative with Marlena Dockin spearheading this requested initiative. A lot of the grants that we're applying for will segue nicely off of this ARP grant request. So there's a lot of good things Marlena's doing. I don't want to steal her thunder, but there's a lot of initiatives on her part to assist with grants, working not only with the sheriff's office, the state's attorney and public defender, but to try to work with the whole legal community in Winnebago to try to find ways to keep people out of jail, and once they're out of jail, to get them back on their feet. Okay, moving on. This is a grant management software based on the productivity of Ms. Dockin so far. I think that's probably a well-deserved and well-spent chunk of money that will help assist track all the grants that she's going to be bringing into the county. Moving on, we have, like I said, these are just blocked out areas. Ms. Fellers, I would encourage you, you made some very valid points about how we're serving certain aspects of our voting community and what we need to do to assist them. I would encourage you and other board members that have a strong commitment to voting rights to work with Clerk Gummow to find out what her intentions are and how she can break this down so you can have a more detailed plan of what we need to do and how we can fund that. Sean Franks, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Mr. Franks' request of examining a lot of these issues that we've addressed with him. These are badly needed issues that need to be addressed, and if we don't pay for it with ARP, we're going to have to pay for it out of our own pocket either way. So there's a whole host of litany of HVAC and issues related to clean air and air quality for not only for the constituents that visit our facilities, but for our employees. So a lot of these are to address these HVAC issues, provide the necessary filters to keep the air quality up and clean in order to meet those needs. and a lot of replacement parts and maintenance for those issues too. So I'll very quickly go through a lot of Mr. Franks' stuff. Individually, they're not a huge amount, but in the aggregate, there are a lot of requests related to this. So, and I don't pretend to understand most of what he's asking for, but they're related to air quality for the most part. Here's a request by Mr. Franks. This involves the nursing home. One of the things that they have requested is the nurse call at River Bluff is antiquated and obsolete. We were going to replace the worst, the nurse call, so residents have the ability to contact the nurse if they need help or assistance. The other thing, and I can't believe, you know, that we don't hit, we're more up on this, but goes into liability mitigation and patient quality and care is Wander Guard. Some of our elderly residents have dementia issues or early dementia, and this, when they wander off site or they wander out of the room, this will provide a warning system to the nurses so they can gather those people up and deal with the situation.
Go ahead, Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rickard, you said we're going to have a compliance officer employed here, that, like, you know, carpet in the adult probation. Somebody's going to look at that before we spend this money to make sure that that's ARP compliant?
Correct. The issue with the carpet is a lot of the carpet can be replaced with the antimicrobial carpet to deal with infectious diseases, not only COVID, but a lot of other things. And like I said, I don't want to specifically defend or promote any request, but that's definitely something I would encourage. Let's go back to that. It's up here somewhere. Here we go. Carpet and flooring, adult probation. That's a very good question to ask Sean. Hey, why are we spending this money? Do we need to spend this money? Could it be better spent somewhere else?
But to your point, Mr. Arena, yes, there will have someone that, you know, is going to review what's allowable, not allowable based on the guidance and the criteria to meet as part of the COVID ARP money. So to answer your question, yes. If not, we're going to have to obviously foot the bill essentially as part of it, right? And so part of the way we can get away with, like in this instance, I'm assuming, is we desperately need to get new carpet. And so one of the things is that the microbial, carpet that could replace that and could be used for ARP money based on, you know, the guidance and the criteria that falls under that. So, but yes, to answer your question, yes, I believe Baker Tilly, right, is going to work with us on what's allowable and not allowable based on the criteria and obviously the guidance that, you know, the Treasury Department has provided. Mr. Rickard?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
Chairman, yeah, that's absolutely correct. We will be retaining, at this point, we're considering retaining Baker Tilly as compliance officers for monitoring all expenditures. But I just wanted to interject that Dave Rickard and myself have already gone through each of these projects, and based on our understanding of the Treasury guidelines, these projects comply. But certainly, you know, we will have other eyes on the compliance question and scrutinize that. But, you know, there were projects that were requested that didn't make it into the ARP based on our understanding of the Treasury guidelines. And so these are not just, this is not just a wish list. It's already gone through a pretty rigorous review for compliance, but it will certainly benefit from the eyes of a compliance officer.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Rickard. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, not at all. And I welcome any questions, and the more clarity we can provide at this point, I think the better off we are. Going on, I'm going to pick up where I left off with the nurse call and the Wander Guard for the nursing home. Moving on to the next request, another HVAC. There are a lot of HVAC requests related, and all those are related to air quality. Here we have, and this is goes in regards to the compliance, and Mr. Thompson's correct. We are currently having discussions with Baker Tilly to provide that additional assurance that we are meeting our compliance standards and making sure we have all the compliance tools necessary to meet that request. So part of that involves, obviously, because we've had two relatively small capital projects playing in a huge capital projects playing part of what we have to do. And we have to get this anyway because of our reporting requirements under GASB, Tyler Capital Asset Tracking Software we're going to implement that will help us track and meet our compliance obligations related to our capital projects and the capital assets we currently hold. The other point is, and this is a plugged amount, is $150,000 available for grant compliance related to the American Rescue Plan Act from finance. IT, a number of issues. I won't pretend to understand or know all the issues involved with this. Mr. Gettner can do a great job explaining in very minute detail what these programs are, why they're beneficial to the county, and how they're going to assist us. Like I said, the federal government's made a strong push. They want to see security and maintenance redundancy and cybersecurity enhancements with our grid, our technology grid, because of the risk we have from foreign interests. They want to see that upgrade, and this will help meet a lot of those obligations we have under that regard. And not only that, but by having new technology, especially on the communication side and on the internet, it will enable us. Our most expensive asset at the county isn't necessarily hardware, it's people. Making sure our people are more productive and can do their work more efficiently will go a long way to offsetting our long-term costs and enable us to use fewer people to get the same job done. So there are certain ancillary benefits to this program beyond just having the best security system available and equipment for our IT department to install. It should help with some of our improved productivity of some of our staff related to that technology. Memorial Hall, a $10,000 request for a laptop, Surface tablet, and scanner. Again, that falls under the same mandate that IT does as far as technology, and that would be covered if the county board chooses to assist Memorial Hall with that expenditure. And John's, this is, remember how we discussed public safety needed we'll call it a project manager. This is, again, the same plugged in amount, $150,000, a project manager related to the public safety initiative to pay for all the modeling and engineering reviews we have to do related to that project before we, so we can kind of spec out what the costs are going to be and then bring it before the board for consideration. Once again, project manager, family law center, same thing. In order to take the conceptual drawings by the chief judge and the circuit clerk, to take that to something we can actually come before the board with a proposal for how we can revamp and reuse that facility. That's to manage that project. Public defender's offices, same thing, technology requests. One of the things necessary is they have some spacing issues to where they're not meeting their separation mandate with staff. Their staff are in too close of quarters to than they should be because of the COVID mandates, and that is to provide some additional adjustment for storage space to allow them to be separated. River Bluff, I won't spend a lot of time on this. As you can imagine, there are a lot of needs at River Bluff. Hopefully this will address some of those needs. Again, with River Bluff, they're kind of at a critical juncture and a center point for COVID-19. We have a lot of additional expenses related to that. These are expenses the county would probably be obligated to pay for anyway. Better to pay for that with ARP, and we're hoping that will lower our liability profile for the nursing home. Sheriff's office, there are a number of significant requests. You'll notice that a number of these are vehicles. The requirement with ARP for the vehicles is there has to be increased functionality related to infectious diseases, probably increased med kits and some other things that would enable these to, like I said, they have to qualify for ARP in order to go through. Just because the sheriff makes a request for patrol vehicles, he has to patrol vehicles that meet that ARP requirement. But again, these are expenditures we are going to have to make in one form or another anyway. So better to double up our needs with what our funding sources are. So there are a number of requests from the sheriff's office, and I'll let the sheriff and his staff justify and explain to the board what those needs are and why. And as Mr. Thompson pointed out, we've already extensively gone through this list, vetted it, and we believe there can be there are valid cases to make on how these are ARP expenditures. More technology infrastructure. This is for the state's attorney's office. Again, this is related to one of the mandates we have is providing public service, healthcare community updates and capacity updates and reports. And the best way to do so in order to meet that need are website technology, and in order to communicate with the general public is pretty antiquated. This will solve some of those technology issues and make our information much more available to the public. And let's see, I think, looks like there was a duplication of the slide here. So same thing, it's just duplicated out. I'll have to remove that. And that concludes our capital, our presentation. Any questions on the capital plan?
Any questions, additional comments?
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure working with you and answering your questions, and I look forward to hopefully answering in a little bit more detail tomorrow if you have more questions, or if you want to call me or email me. I'll do the best I can to answer them, or at least direct you to the right department head or elected official that can provide you additional information.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Rickert, on your presentation. We'll move on to our next item, which is, I believe we're pretty much done, and all it is are there any other matters to come before this committee? Yes, Mr. Butita.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. I sent an email to a lot of you earlier today, excuse me, regarding an article I read in the Tribune this past Sunday regarding Senate Bill 205, regarding property taxes and how PTEL will allow our county to collect taxes from a previous year based on refunds or assessor's errors. So I sent a copy of the article, and I encourage you all to read it. And it's my hope and suggestion that we can have our assessor address us in the very near future on the implications to our county and the Winnebago County taxpayers to the ramifications of this legislation, which I understand is either en route to the governor's desk or on the governor's desk. He hasn't made a decision to sign it, I guess. But it sounds like there's, it could be, depending on which side you look on it. I've read both sides of the issue. And and to be honest with you, I don't know how it's going to impact us. So that's why I'm asking if we get some information from our assessor. I'm sure he's probably got a good handle on this, and address us so we know which side of the issue we should be on.
Mr. Butita, just a follow-up to that. Did
Yes.
you talk to our assessor or send the information to him?
I have not. You know what? That's my error. I didn't send it to him, but I'll follow up and
Yeah, if you don't mind.
forward that to him. I sent it to most of the leadership of this meeting here. So, but I will follow up and send it to him also.
Yeah, why don't you
Good
do
idea.
that? Just so he can maybe
Yep.
start planning on
Heads up.
presenting to us
Yep, good
what the
idea.
implications are.
Yep.
But no, that's awesome. That's great. I didn't know that there was something out there, so I appreciate that. Any other matters to come before this committee? All right, seeing none. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please? Motion by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Arena. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Looking forward to tomorrow and getting more debating and voting on those items for tomorrow. Thank you very much.